Am I the asshole for arguing with my daughter's dad after he told her about his diagnosis? Me, F36, and my daughter's Leah, 13 inches dad, M37, got divorced 3 years ago. We used to share custody of her, but now that her dad recently got diagnosed with cancer, things are a bit of a mess. He and his family have been busy with his illness, and since Leah hasn't gone to stay with him for 2 weeks now, he and his sister visited days ago. They saw each other and he requested a private minute with her in her room. I gave them all the privacy they needed, but as soon as I heard commotion I decided to enter the room. I walked in on them hugging and both him and Leah were crying. I freaked out because I didn't know why she was crying, but she refused to answer when I asked. She left the room and I immediately asked her dad what happened. He told me that he just told her about his diagnosis. I was in shock. I asked if he seriously did that and he looked at me confused. I told him he shouldn't have done that without telling me. He looked even more confused and said that Leah needed to know because he needs her as part of his support to recover, and said that he didn't get how and why he was supposed to wait for or consult me. I got mad and told him this wasn't okay, but he lashed back at me saying he didn't need my permission to tell her since he is her father and since it doesn't concern me, but I disagreed, harshly. I told him he made a huge mistake because of how this can, and will, affect her mental and emotional health. He responded by saying that I was unreasonable to expect him to hide his diagnosis from her and act like he's okay when he's not. He called me selfish because I know how his health will impact his time with her and he doesn't want her to think he's neglecting her when he's going through rough times. I told him she wouldn't notice, especially since I suggested having her come live with me while GE gets treatment, which what we're doing as of now. He didn't like what I said and tried to walk out, but I told him that we weren't done. His sister came in and started arguing with me, then told him to get ready to leave. She chewed me off for about 5 minutes about how I should stop having expectations of her brother and acting like I have authority or legal connection to him. Then I had her leave cause I couldn't take it anymore. We haven't talked since then because his sister has been all over me about it. I can't believe you really have to ask. You are the asshole. You are the asshole. You told him she wouldn't notice and wanted him to hide it from her. She's 13, not 3. She would absolutely notice. Normally I'd agree that this warranted a conversation with you so that you could both break the news together and that you'd be there to support your daughter, but it's absolutely clear that you wanted to keep this from her, and I don't blame your ex for what he did. He then tried to walk out and you blocked his path, told him you weren't done and caused a massive scene. What's wrong with you? He has cancer, that's rough to go through, and what he doesn't need is an ex that thinks she knows better than him getting in his face and causing problems. You are the asshole. I want my kid to be lied to. Does that make me an asshole? Yes, it does. You are the asshole. You expect him to have his daughter thinking that he just abandoned her for no reason? I've seen some pretty selfish things on this sub and I'd say this is in the top 5. You are the asshole. For every reason that they already explained to you. You're a control freak. YTA in such a massive way that I have a hard time believing this is real. Surely, no one would dare prevent a father from being hoest and trying to prepare his daughter for his possible death and long-term declining health. You're not just ta. You're a miserable excuse of a human and an example of some of our worst tendencies. Jesus. Am I the asshole for telling my daughter she and her husband should be more respectful? My sister Beth and her husband hosted a family gathering a few days ago with our extended family. I have a daughter Holly who recently got married to John. They attended as well. Holly and John kept touching, holding hands, and he would be kissing her. It wasn't anything crazy, just a few pecks on the cheek, but I thought it was a little inappropriate to be going on like that in a family gathering. Beth came over and said that Holly and John were setting a really bad example, so I told Holly that she should be more respectful of everyone and John doesn't need to kiss her in public. Holly was furious, saying that she and John aren't doing anything bad and we need to grow up. They ended up leaving the gathering early and I haven't spoken to her since then. Holding hands and kissing on the cheek? The horror. You're so right, no one should ever see healthy displays of affection. Can you imagine what the world would turn into if too many people started holding hands with the person they love? You are the asshole. You are the asshole. Holding hands and kissing on the cheek? How is this offensive? You are the asshole. Based on what you described, you're just an uptight prude, and so is your family. And exactly what is the really bad example they're setting? That married couples might actually like and care for one another? OMG. How awful. Your daughter is right. Grow up. You are the asshole. If your family wants to LARP as Vulcans, I guess that's y'all's prerogative. But don't shame the newlyweds for embracing their youth and joie de vivre. You are the asshole. I understand that PTA tolerances may vary between generations and cultures, but a husband kissing his wife and hand-holding is fairly standard. Especially for newlyweds. If I were your daughter, I would refuse to show up to any more family gatherings until you and Beth have apologized. I would just not feel welcome otherwise. Edit. Yeah, PDA. Long reign the typo supreme. But PTA tolerances also vary. At least according to the Bad Moms movies. You are the asshole. Heaven forbid a couple show each other they actually have feelings and care about each other. I don't blame her for leaving, you all were ridiculous. Setting a bad example, JFC. Am I the asshole for telling my nephew to make amends with his estranged sister? My sister died when her 2 children were very young. Her husband raised the children as a single dad until he died 3 years ago. My niece, let's call her Brenda, is 34. My nephew, let's call him Brian, is 30. I, 49F, have always been close with Brenda. I sort of took under my wing after my sister died. She comes to me for guidance. I have children of my own, but I consider Brenda my bonus daughter. She was very close with her father and she was utterly devastated when he died suddenly. Brian has always been in his own world. He didn't have much of a relationship with his father, and he has always been distant with me and my children. He moved 13 hours away when he was 21 and he got married there. He barely visits. Brian hates Brenda. He estranged himself from her right after their father died. He claims that Brenda is a bully to him and his wife. He also claims that Brenda stole his inheritance. Brenda can be spirited and emotional sometimes, and she says things she doesn't mean, but she's a good person with a big heart. She goes to church with me, and Brian and his wife haven't stepped foot into a church in a long time. Brenda helps out with my mother, and Brian visits my mother, his own grandmother, only every 1 or 2 years. We have no idea what Brian is doing with his life. I stayed out of the inheritance situation because it's none of my business. Brenda was very devastated when her brother disowned her. She has no family left except me, my children and my mother. I spent a lot of time supporting her through it. Recently my mother had a 75th birthday party and Brian came. Of course his wife couldn't be bothered to come. Brenda was out of town so she wasn't there. Brian and I sat at the same table with my children and their own significant others. I updated Brian on how Brenda was doing and he blew up at me. He told me that he didn't care about his sister and what was going on with her. He demanded that I stop talking about her. I told him that I wished he would make amends with her and he scoffed and said it would never happen. I suggested that he move back home and maybe they'll get past all this because it's what his parents would have wanted. He said nothing and stormed off. I was humiliated because he spoke to me in a disrespectful way in front of my children and he was talking so loudly that other tables could hear him. My son and his girlfriend admitted that they don't like Brenda either. That was news to me, and I should respect Brian's wishes. I tried to explain my feelings but they told me to post here. Am I the asshole? You are the asshole from what you wrote. You have no idea about Brian's side at all. You're wrong to presume you can lecture him on that relationship since you only know one side of it. And you were even more wrong to choose to discuss the situation with him at an event for your mother while you were sitting with a bunch of family members instead of asking to speak with him privately and not at a family event. The fact that you felt humiliated is entirely your own fault. How do you think Brian felt having what is obviously a very sensitive issue brought up while he's at an event with a bunch of family members that he rarely sees? You are the asshole. Big time. First, what does going to church have to do with anything? Second, you admit Brenda says things that are mean. You have taken her side without considering all the facts. And now your own children tell you they don't like her. You need to step back and get a better perspective. He claims that Brenda is a bully to him and his wife. Info, is he right? Your account here doesn't track. Brian moved far away almost as soon as he could. People don't generally abandon a family support structure like that unless it isn't actually supportive to them as an individual. So how did it get to the point where Brian would rather have no contact or minimal contact with his family? I was humiliated because he spoke to me in a disrespectful way in front of my children and he was talking so loudly that other tables could hear him. You brought up a subject you knew he was uncomfortable with, and it probably wasn't the first time, and didn't back off when he got upset. You brought any humiliation you felt on yourself. You need to apologize and stop butting into his life unless you want him to cut off contact with you too. You are the asshole. You are the asshole. It's very clear how much more you have favored Brenda since they were children, and your opinion of her, and Brian, is extremely biased. Brian has made it quite plain his reasonable boundaries of not wanting to have Brenda in his life, and you trampled all over them. Your feelings about their relationship, or lack thereof, are absolutely meaningless. Info. What happened when you asked Brian more information about Brenda bullying him and his wife? What did he tell you? What did you say to him about his sister bullying him? Of course his wife couldn't be bothered to come. Brenda was out of town so she wasn't there. Why is it that his wife couldn't be bothered to come but Brenda just was out of town so she wasn't there? Am I the asshole for refusing to sacrifice my me time? My friends and I can only get together once a month. Between different work schedules, some having kids, other commitments, it's hard to schedule. But we all do our damnedest to be there because we're important to each other. It's the second Saturday of every month. We meet up at someone's house, have lunch, talk about everything. Sometimes we go somewhere outside and sometimes we just stay in. It's very important to us. My girlfriend said her mother's birthday dinner is July 9th and we need to attend. I told her I wasn't available. She said I can give up my me time for her mom because moms are more important than friends. This isn't me time though. I need this time to maintain my friendships so we don't drift apart. I suggested we do something with her mom on her actual birthday, the 7th. She said that won't work because her mom will be tired and need to get ready for work the next day. I suggested maybe something on Sunday? She said her mom would find that disrespectful to celebrate her birthday on the Lord's Day. I said if she isn't even going to try to compromise then neither am I. She thinks I'm being a prick. Am I? Update. I texted girlfriend to ask if we could skip church this week because my sister is coming to town. This is not true. She said no, sister can come to church with us. I said sister will be tired. She said church is most important. I asked, so it's church family friends? She asked if this is about my friends. I said yes. She told me that it was childish to be so invested in childhood friendships. I apologized for trying to trap her in a hypothetical and then said we can't talk about it at home. I think the many people who said we are incompatible are correct. I will probably break up with her tomorrow night. Thank you for your perspectives. Info. Is there a reason you couldn't do both? It seems like your friend's gathering is for lunch, and the birthday is a dinner. My man, you need to edit and add some details. After reading through your comments. If I understand you correctly. You've been together 9 months, do not live together. This will be a formal dinner starting at 4:30 with a 4-hour drive there and back sprung on you last minute with no willingness to compromise if you're wanted there. Nope, no can do. Y'all have a great time, I'll see you when you get back. Not the asshole. Edit. Words. Not the asshole. You're supposed to make her family a priority but she won't make yours a priority. Why should you go to her mother's party if she puts church above your sister? Your friendships are important to you and given her hypocrisy you're not wrong to prioritize them over her mother. I'm curious why you're asking her if you can skip church. You don't need her permission. Not the asshole. FFS, you're only dating for 9 months. Ignore those who try to tell you to ditch your friends. You are not the asshole. And that part where you asked to skip church has shown me girlfriend is controlling type. Dump her. You must come to Mother's B-Day, and ditch your friends. You must go to church. Yeah, no red flags here. Relationships are mostly about compromise and skipping one gathering with friends would not be end of world. But girlfriend is orders of magnitude worse than you in compromising. Dude. How important do you consider your GF? How important is this relationship? How big of a hill is this for you? You might end up with your friends and without a GF. If this is an okay thing for you, proceed without compromise. I have to ask, what time is the dinner? Your post indicates you and your BFFs meet for lunch. Any possibility you could curtail and cut back the time spent on that Saturday to attend a birthday dinner later? You don't mention bending your elbow, but maybe sip less and compromise more. Avoiding everything else people talked about. Why can't the mom celebrate on the Sunday? Because it's the Lord's Day. WTF. So what happens when it actually falls on a Sunday? Do they move it? But you should see if your friends can, not must, move everything to Sunday if possible so no one misses out. If not, then so be it.